Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, bots and cons to Tech Talk, the officially unofficial Transformers TCG podcast. I'm joined, as always, by Scott of VectorSigma.info. And Scott, I managed to not die over the weekend from whatever illness happens to be going around my house. And we're getting an early start before the Thanksgiving holiday. And by the time most people are hearing this, it's only going to be like 5 days to the big show.
I know, it's crazy.
It was weird when you and I were coordinating this offline. You know, when should we record? What topics do we want to cover? Do we want to spread it out? Blah, blah, blah. It really struck me when it was like, wow, it's really only, when we were talking about it, 2 weeks away. And it feels like we've been talking about it for so long. We've been building up to it for so long that it's finally here, which is really cool.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot of time.
Yeah, it's funny how time flies. That I guess there's a lot of sayings about that. So, but rather than belabor that particular point, let's jump into a few things because Scott, we had a lot of stuff come up in the last week. There was an event. There's obviously the very short remaining countdown to the Energon Invitational. There were some rules updates. There's a whole lot of drama going on. There's things to satiate every potential listener and viewer, I think. So I figured we'd start with the drier topic, and that is the rules update that came out. There were a couple changes. There were three major ones, I think, and hopefully I didn't miss any. So correct me if I did forget one, Scott. But the first one that I have up on screen right now that I wanted to highlight was that there are no more unintentional draws. And the way the end of match procedure works has changed. And then it's followed up by, the tiebreaker changed as a result. And then it's followed up by cards from outside the game. So if we start with how the end of match procedure changes, which is now characters all get tapped out as opposed to a single turn. And then after that, it will move into tiebreakers. Give me your first impression of this, or do you have an impression of this at this point?
Do I have an impression? Of course.
I know, it was kind of rhetorical, but...
So I guess the question, the thing I don't understand, there's an echo, by the way, is what happens, did you get a turn for each one of the untapped guys? Like you draw, play upgrades, play actions, etc.?
That was my interpretation of it, but now that you're saying that, I'm second-guessing myself.
I mean, my interpretation was that you do also, but I don't understand how that's a, quote, good rule change, because I don't understand how that's supposed to save any time, unless you're under the assumption that we're later in, quote, Game 3, and so it's just some of your guys are dead, so there's just not as many turns left to be taken if time works out that way. But I mean, if we're at a start of, I don't know, what we call the start of the combat round where everyone's untapped, I don't understand how that's faster than each person getting one turn unless they have one bot.
Well, I don't think a
fairness factor, but
I may have, yeah, exactly that. I may have missed it because Scott Van Essen did do a short blurb explaining the thought process behind some of the changes, and I'm skimming it right now to see if I can find it, but I didn't see anything specifically calling out that they were concerned really with. I mean, I guess the assumption is, yeah, it's going to take longer, but that's okay.
I mean,
I think it's more that exactly what you said, that it's more to the fairness. You feel as if it was as close to a completed game as you can reasonably do, as opposed to, yeah, you get one turn and call it a day.
I mean, these Energon Invitational rounds are going to be very, very, very long.
Yeah, these are going to be very long rounds. I could certainly see that being the case. It's going to be draining. If by the end of round 6, you're going to feel like you really put in some effort. Because
there's no time limit in those extra turns, right? So, I mean, by definition.
I mean, yes, but at the same time, I'm sure it follows, and again, I don't think this is specifically laid out, but it's still, even though it's untimed, you still have to play at a reasonable pace. You can't just go, all right, I'm going to put my hand down and now consider all of my options. Like, you still have to actively be progressing the game.
I mean, by that argument, you have to do that at all times. I don't see that being like the case, to be honest with you. Like, I think this is bad for tournament play.
Really?
For constructed tournament play, I think this is bad.
I mean, I would
from a time perspective, it's just going to take forever.
Oh yeah, it's certainly going to. But by the same token, there was the argument when they first implemented a lot of these rules of just simply people will learn. Now, I think there might be the assumption, and I don't know if these rules changes were coordinated with, oh, we're going to do this before the Energon Invitational because now we've gone through our tournament season. These should be the top tier players that would be able to pull this off anyway. So therefore, you can hold them to a higher standard, and then they'll have judges going around actively monitoring for people playing slowly. I don't know. I would
sure they will.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there are going to be judges. We could have that conversation for another day.
For another day before Energon Invitational? No, we didn't.
Well, no, I mean down the road. Like, I don't know if that's definitely not a conversation for today. I'm a little surprised that the changes went in before the Invitational as opposed to immediately following. I don't know. It's not really at this stage, I think, a matter of data. It's just a matter of consistency. I like this. I don't care that the tournament's going to be longer, but it is certainly, don't get me wrong, like, it matters. And for me personally, like, I have specific health issues where, like, my attention span is going to drop. Like, I need to now for anybody, I mean, without disclosing too much, I happen to be type 2 diabetic. So when my blood sugar gets low, like, my brain is not there. And if I need, like, this drives sometimes what decks I'll play because I need to be able to take a break and go get something to eat. Or I got to carry around 50 candy bars or orange juice things or something. I'm sure there are other people out there with other conditions, or just in general, you don't want to sit in one place for 65 plus minutes in a 50-minute round because your opponent took 200 years to decide what to do with their single card in hand. Because we've all played those games.
I mean, you're going to have time to go do what you want if you're not the person in the situation. That's my whole point.
Yes. I mean, it's certain, but it depends on how many, like, as you alluded to earlier, I'm expecting more than one game to go to time in 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah. There always are.
Yeah. In general, I do like the idea because it does feel a little silly to do one turn, but I mean, this is obviously still a work in progress. So I'm sure this will evolve if it turns out that this doesn't quite work out.
So I have a question and a caveat.
Uh-oh. What do you got?
So the question is, I saw a match in Dallas where the game 3 hadn't even started. Do both players get all 3 turns? Like, I don't know where that's at.
Well, it's saying that so you would determine who goes first. Then play continues as normal until a player wins the game or all characters are tapped at the end of a turn. So basically, you just play a regular round 1 game, I guess.
That's not what happened.
Okay, what happened?
I'm just pointing. They just did the third tiebreaker thing or whatever because they were going to a game 3.
Okay.
So I don't know. I mean, that was probably because it's the first time being used, but I don't know what the way you resolve it is.
For anybody listening to this after the fact, these rules were implemented, like 3 days before Dallas? 4 days?
Yeah, I just don't know what. I don't know what the situation. Like in Magic, you would just play till first death or whatever, or 5 turns each or whatever. So
yeah. I think that based on this, and I have it up on screen now, this is just a screenshot of what was from there. It sounds like they should have, played till the wheel, but
right, that's what I thought too.
Yeah, I mean, was that the caveat, or what? Where was the caveat?
No, my caveat is I think this is better for limited.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it.
But those matches are going to take 1,000 years.
Well, yes.
So, I mean, if you think the constructed ones are going to go with people going in a tank, forget it in limited.
Yeah, that limited is going to be a problem. Like we've said this in other tournament prep stuff, and we'll probably repeat it in the EI prep section later. But actually, you're not being a dick if you tell your opponent at the outset, "Hey, man, we got to play quick. We've got to keep up the pace because otherwise we're going to time, and that's going to suck. So, and it's worth, and again, we've covered it before, but it's worth saying it at the outset because when everybody starts looking at the clock and then you're doing it, it's a feel bad for everybody because it feels like you're trying to take advantage of it, even if you're not. So just everybody be consciously aware.
And the lack of unintentional draws is just a math thing. It really doesn't matter to me one way or the other.
Yeah,
it changes the record needed to get to the elimination or get to prizes or whatever, but it doesn't really matter, quote unquote.
Yeah. So do you care about the tiebreaker change at all? Like, does that impact you in any meaningful way?
The life total thing?
Well, it's life total, and then instead of orange pips, it's white pips now.
No, I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, I get the logic. There were a lot of words written about it. I just hope I don't have to worry about it. I'm going to try and win or lose without it. And then...
Is it damage dealt or life remaining that becomes the tiebreaker?
So... cannot end in an unintentional draw. At the end of the additional time, if players have won an equal number of games, each player counts the amount of health remaining on their characters on the battlefield. The higher health remaining wins the match.
Health remaining. Okay, so it's damage dealt.
Yes.
Okay, so that's better than like I'm going to side in my giant guy because I have a bigger team than you.
Yeah, exactly.
It still comes down to damage dealt. Okay.
I mean, that would be the most absurd sideboard strategy, but I guess it could be a thing.
Pointing it out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I would. It's definitely a thing to call attention to. Other than that, yeah, I don't. I get why it's white pips versus orange pips or blue or whatever, but whatever. Sure. I don't care. Now the last one is the cards outside the game, which I had called this out on Twitter shortly after I had first seen the rules changes, and this was something that one of our newer players, well, I mean, you and I have known him for years, but newer to Transformers had said, why isn't this done the same way as Magic? Well, now it is. And that specifically is that if something says get a card from outside the game, you have to get it from your sideboard. You can't just carry around a stack of 85 copies of Leap of Faith, which we'll get to later. You have to actually have a legal sideboard and main deck, and the cards have to come from there.
What does it say about character cards for Grimlock from Wave 2? Does it say only battle cards? When a card refers to a character from outside the game, those cards from outside the game must be in the possession of the player at the beginning of the match. So they don't, not in sideboard.
Correct. So it's really battle cards are the change here because obviously Wave 2, well, I mean, you're probably not seeing too many Wave 2 Grimlocks anyway, but Wave 2 Grimlock, or cards similar in that vein, would have been completely decimated by this.
Yeah. I mean, this is fine. This is the way it should be. I don't have a problem with it. It didn't... I don't see it doing what it was intended to do.
Well,
in practical play, but... I
think that part of it was to address a later topic, and then part of it was also just consistency. To me, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but this logically makes sense. Like, this is my deck. These are the cards I can use, not my entire collection when I show up to an event. But I could guess I can understand the fuzzy argument against that, where it's like, well, does it really matter? It's my collection. I don't know. I think it's fine. Like, I don't really see any issue with this.
Yep.
So anything else you want to throw in about the rules, Scott, before I'm sure we'll come back to it as we talk about other things, but anything specifically about them?
No, it should be good.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these, as we're tightening things up, it keeps things cleaner. So we'll move on from there, and we will start talking about the most recent Pro Play Tour event that was actually in Dallas. So shout out to people in chat who had said they were locals there or at the event. I want to make sure before we get too far into it, because anybody listening to this probably can assume that we're going to get derailed a little bit. I want to call out that Kai ended up taking down the whole event with a 3-wide major shockwave build, so congratulations to him. Scott, did you get a chance to look or peruse all of the deck lists more than a cursory glance?
I'd be lying if I said quote more than a cursory glance. I put them on the website.
Gotcha.
And I looked at them, but I didn't retype them or anything, so I wouldn't say I studied them.
Well, I have them up now, or at least I'm looking at Kai's list. I mean, I'm going to ignore the obvious variations, which again we'll get to momentarily, both in the sideboard and the main deck, character selections, battle cards, all over the place. But for the most part, it appears that it's kind of what you'd expect from 3-Wide Shockwave. We talked about it last time, I believe, when we were talking about updates to existing builds moving forward. Out of whether it was his deck or any of the others, did anything outside of the Daring Escape related things jump out to you as like, oh, that's a really surprising thing that showed up?
His 6 combat actions. So I think he had 3 Leap into Battles and 3 Bigger They Are's, right?
Yes. Now, the Bigger They Are's I can certainly understand, but you're right. The Leap into Battles were a little bit of a surprise. I mean, they obviously make sense. Get more value out of your little guys, or make Shockwave into even more of a monster than he already is. I'm very curious how those played out over the day.
I mean, when I saw, they obviously did what they needed to do. I mean, I think it probably gets you an extra, like, saves you an attack at times, which is exactly what you want to be doing.
Right.
If you're expecting a heavier orange meta, then Leap is fine. And then if you're expecting a heavier blue meta, then Bigger They Are gives value to those little guys. And depending on what he was expecting, can give value to Shockwave as well.
Yep. I mean, that is a thing that could happen now, which is a little ridiculous, but it is true. Beyond that, I mean, I'm trying to count them real quick, but it would appear that the secret action count as a whole was lower than I might have expected going in. But clearly it ended up working out for him, the particular configuration that he had. So again, shout out to Kai and congratulations. Were there any other decks that stood out to you immediately, or anything else that you want to call out before we get into the 800-pound gorilla?
The Springer deck was interesting. The Springer aggro deck.
Mm-hmm. Your girl Nova Storm showed up in one of the lists.
Yeah. in the Octane deck.
Yeah, exactly.
How many black upgrades did he have?
Oh boy, now I'm going to count this real quick. We got Smoke Cloak at 3, Terrifying Resilience makes 6.
All right, we're done. That's enough bad ones for me.
Okay. Hey, Terrifying Resilience is okay.
Okay. So yeah, Artist Underblade, I assume, is there, right?
You would assume incorrectly.
Okay, so it's just the armor.
Well, there's other black pips.
No,
but for her ability, because her other thing is the fling. I think.
Well, you still have to have an upgrade on her, though.
Oh, shit. Okay, I don't have that card in front of me, so that... Okay. Yeah, that, Good lord.
Sorry.
Sounds like something died.
No, I'm going across the road.
All right. Well, it's not going to be you that...
No.
We don't want you to turn into pavement pizza.
No, there's like a deer right in front of him.
So moving on from there was that Springer deck you were talking about. There was a tanks build, which makes me happy in my heart of hearts. Again, it was something significantly different than what I probably would have. Well, I know what I've been doing.
Yes. Character
lineup, definitely the same. The battle deck is significantly different, but again, it seemed to work out. I have to assume, and I would love if somebody could tell me if the Ironhide Steadfast Brawler was a meme in the sideboard. I can only assume that that's the case.
No, I saw him sided in his top 8 match.
Oh, really?
And
I didn't catch the top 8. So what did he board it in against?
What did he play? Not Blaster, not Daring. I guess it was Shockwave. I think it was Shockwave.
There were 2 Shockwave decks, so
I think it was Shockwave.
Interesting. So does he have?
It didn't do anything. Don't even.
Well, I was going to say, are there static lasers in like
no,
that?
No.
Okay. It could still be a meme, and he was just doing it for the lulz in Game 3 or something. So, but anyway, like I said, there were 2 Shockwave decks. There was the Blaster that you mentioned, the 2 Tall Jetfire, the Octone list, Springer, tanks, and I think that's 8. I'm clicking through rapidly, so I might have skipped some. It definitely had a variety of different things. It had a mix of old stuff. It had a mix of new stuff. And then it had a mix of kind of Public Enemy #1 at the moment. I don't know how many. I believe Kent was the only person running Daring Escape at the event.
As far as I know, yeah.
But he's certainly the only one who top 8'd. He's running a different version than what was publicly posted up to this point, but I think everybody was aware that even if they didn't have his list, that a lot of these builds were possible and were, they were out there in the sense that somebody had them. It was just a matter of figuring them out. But they all come back to the same thing of, if you look at the other deck lists, the non-Daring Escape deck lists, many of them boarded answers, but a significant portion of them main decked answers, whether that's main deck turbo boards or main deck Calibursts or main deck in Kai's winning list, Jam Signals and Espionages, in addition to Calibursts, in addition, there's a lot of layers of, we'll call it respect for the deck.
Sure.
So
perceived respect, I guess.
Well, I mean, it was, to everyone's credit, it was definitely a topic of discussion leading into the event, and has been for a little bit of time now. I mean, we had our show on it. Mark wrote his article on it. There have been a number of Facebook posts on it. WotC had an official article on it, all covering it from different angles and different capacities. I can't really blame anybody for taking the path that they did, where they're main decking one of these characters.
No, it's fine.
Well, is it though? Is it though?
I mean, I don't. How do I say? I didn't see the Calibers having that much of a detrimental effect even when the Shockwaves had weapons attached to them already.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't see you're basically just going down one attack, and I don't think I ever saw a card drew off him. But I'm sure in the Shockwave mirror, they're in the top 4. I'm sure there were cards being drawn through the Caliber's weapons.
Yeah.
And then you dealt splash damage to things like the Springer aggro. You would deal splash damage wherever he used his ability. If there were card decks, you would have dealt splash damage to them. If there were Demolisher flipping with the 2 other tanks, you would have dealt splash damage to them. There's it doesn't hurt you, in my opinion, that much if the 6-5-14 route is the way you want to go.
Right. Yeah, and I can agree with that. It's a safe answer, we'll call it, where you're not giving up that much in order to try and play this particular character. You can present a threat to the greater meta like you're describing, but also try and hose a particular deck. Now, the efficacy of that particular strategy against that deck is up for debate, but I get the logic behind it.
Right.
In general, because this is the thing, you were saying you think it's fine that this is existing. Is it fine?
What's existing?
Well, Daring Escape obviously heavily influenced this event. If we go in into... You don't think so?
No.
I
only saw 2 turbo boards in the top 8, so I don't think that's true.
Well, we don't have the remainder of the lists at this stage.
I'm pretty confident that there weren't a lot of other ones floating around.
I mean, I don't think, while I agree with you about the Caliburst, for example, you don't think main deck Jam Signals was in for you can't draw a direct line from that to Daring Escape?
Sure, that's fine. That's fair. It's not like you ran 2 more on his board and a bunch of other secret actions that interact with that as well. So I think the influence.
Well, he did though. That's the thing. So
I saw a lot of one of us in his sideboard.
Well, yeah, he's running one. So there was a main deck espionage. This is Kai's list we're talking about.
Yep.
It would be he had main deck espionage and 2 jam signals. Then in the board he had another espionage and another jam signals and a hijack.
Okay.
So like, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he wanted to make sure he had answers for that particular matchup. Now the other, excuse me, the other Shockwave list was running hijacks in the board. And I apologize that I'm dragging this out a bit. I'm trying to read people's handwriting at the same time, which is sometimes more of a challenge than you might think.
Yeah, that was my issue with why I didn't quote study the list.
Yeah. I don't see anything that's jumping out to me as a direct DE answer in the main deck. Obviously, the Blaster deck, which happened to take it down, was running Turbo Board as part of his initial composition. And we could go through all the lists, but in general, this particular level of answers is fine in general, you're thinking? Like, you don't feel that... Okay, well, that was the question I originally asked you.
I mean, he only lost to the deck that ran the Turbo Board main deck. So, clearly, no.
Well, that's something, though, also, in addition to not having the other lists, I'm not sure... At this time, I don't have any idea what he played in the first 5 rounds, like the Swiss rounds.
I mean, he went undefeated.
Well, yes, but the point is did he go undefeated through Turbo Board / other answers, or were people I don't want to say wildly unprepared, but they just didn't have an answer, so he goes, all right, I do my thing, and I win. I know one of the games, or one of the matches, he was on stream, and that appeared to be the case.
Yes, right. That's why I just assume it's the same way.
And it's possible. I mean, again, not to beat a dead horse, we already talked about this a lot, and to kind of segue into more directly Energon Invitational discussion, how do you feel this influences things going forward? Like, as far as like, do we expect that now everybody's running Turbo Board main deck, or do you think that's a reasonable expectation?
Main deck? No, I don't think that's a reasonable expectation.
I'm guessing by that you mean it's reasonable to expect that there's probably going to be a lot of turbo boards and sideboards.
I would imagine so.
I mean, at this point, anybody who cares can easily go back and watch the VOD. The deck lists are up. If you're not prepared for it, it's got to be a conscious decision that I'm not going to include this because I want to value this other matchup higher, is, I think, the reasonable conclusion to draw at that point.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, you have to either think that your main deck is weak against something else and you're okay with that, or you're weak against this and you're okay with that.
Exactly.
Like, whichever way we want to play it. I
mean, at the end of the day, that's not an uncommon decision in games or metas in general, where you can't beat everything all the time. So you gotta choose your battles and either hope you dodge it or that you can outplay somebody.
No, but given an unknown metagame, because this was only, at the end of the day, a 24, 23 person tournament.
Something like that, yeah.
We know what one of the decks that you want to prepare for is, and we know a few of the decks you want to prepare for. Like, 2 of them are just updated versions of old decks with Blaster and Shockwave, and one of them's a new combo based deck with Daring Escape, and there really isn't, like, everything else is pretty much, I mean, Tank's deck is out there. There's been like a million deck techs on it from various content creators.
A lot of people like tanks, I'm not gonna lie.
And I'm trying to think what else was, like, the Sprinter deck was new, so you can test against that. But I mean, like, in general, like, you should, like, if you were preparing, you would have known to test against 2 of the 3 decks already as it is, and now you're just adding a new variable to it. So, like, that's why I'm saying it will have an undue influence, because you should have already been prepared for their decks that existed, because they've existed for the last, like, what, I don't know, 3 months or something like that. So
yeah.
Like, I don't think you could walk into a tournament being like, oh, I auto lose to Blaster. Like, I mean, that probably is not a good idea. Like, or, oh, I auto lose to Shockwave. Like, that's probably not a good idea. Like, maybe there's nothing that doesn't lose to one of the 2 generally, but, like, you can't not have tested those matchups, even if there were older versions of the decks.
Absolutely.
Or your own versions of the decks, like whatever. Or you're choosing to play one of those decks. Like I just don't think you could have you could prepare for those ahead of time. I don't think you could prepare for this until now it's out there. So that's why I believe it will have an undue influence on the metagame for Energon Invitational.
That makes sense. While you were talking, I realized why there was an echo, so I apologize to everybody. I'll see if I can edit that out afterwards. So the
I don't hear myself anymore.
Yeah. I actually had to get my headset connected. That kind of helps, right? Normally I have it on ahead of time, and then I just didn't today. So the other detail that came in from chat, beautiful Kai. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that might be Kai, our winner. So if it is, congratulations again. What was that?
Oh, that's his name. Okay.
Yeah. He's saying that at least 18 of the 23 people there had a character dedicated to D, whether main deck or sideboard, which is
a character in their opinion dedicated to it.
Well, I mean, that of course is going to be the question as to what characters are they running, what was it run out of, but it does speak to the idea that people were trying to respect the deck.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know how much else there is to say. There is a lot of information to be gleaned from this outside of the Daring Escape deck. I think that, like you said, a lot of the decks that we saw and expected to perform well continue to do the things that they were doing well before and moving into the new meta. We do have some new players that I think still need to be put through their paces. And now that they're officially out there, whether it's Daring Escape or otherwise, people will be able to pin down exactly where their weaknesses happen to lie. So if we move into talking about actually preparing for the Invitational, Scott, assuming there's nothing else you wanted to add about the event itself.
No, that's fine.
So we've done a number of segments on other shows before about preparing for tournaments in general, but is there anything specifically you wanted to call out that is different about this one?
Yeah, multiple things. So first of all, I assume most people are getting in on Thursday night, Friday morning, and if you're already qualified, there's, quote, no pressure for you to play on Friday in the LCQs.
Mm-hmm.
I assume the invites pass down in the LCQs. I don't know if that's been said officially, but I assume they do.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything about it, but we did have that discussion about some of the odd verbiage for it. I think some of them are like true, only the winner gets it, but there was at least one, if I recall correctly, where they passed down. Well, they had to be whoever, because I think most of them are single elimination, now that I'm saying it again.
Yeah, I think they're like 8-man pods or something. I don't even know, or I might be getting it confused with the PPG LCQs in Orlando, but I know those are 8-man pods. I don't remember how they're exactly working, but I assume the invitations pass down. So let's go with that assumption that the invitations pass down.
Yeah.
Then there's really no reason not to play in them if you just want additional practice. Unless you feel like, I guess you could say like live fire practice. Unless you just feel like you want to spend Friday hanging out at the convention, hanging out with people, testing on your own, like whatever. I guess I would just make the argument if that was the case, like why are you spending an extra night in a hotel? But like that's neither here nor there.
Right.
So like if you're there, like it's basically like kind of like a win a box, like you by playing in them.
Right.
So like the prizes are still good. So I would just I would play. I'm not saying you have to play like deck 1A you're planning on playing on Saturday, but I would play other things just to get an idea of like how certain things interact and stuff like that. I mean, I guess I just can't imagine anybody has the opportunity to just play on command as often as this. And again, if you're coming with other people and you want to get some test games in with your friends and stuff and teammates and stuff, like obviously you can probably grind out more games than playing in tournament games. But I think it's a good idea to get yourself used to these tournament rules we mentioned, or just just have this live fire practice against people that need to win. Let's just put it that way. Like everybody on Saturday, every round will need to win, and on Friday, like you can play at a pace that's like not taking back mistakes or keeping track of things, just putting you in the right mindset. So, I mean, like if you feel like you're over pressuring yourself by playing in them, like just play and drop out or something like that. But like I would try to get in one or two throughout the day just to put yourself in that frame of mind.
Right.
And then don't stay out too late on Friday. And then
sure, Dad.
Yeah. And then just be ready for Saturday. And Saturday is going to be immensely different than Gen Con and Origins. Immensely.
Well, how so? Because that's the obvious question.
Well, the only equivalent to them would be whatever the largest qualifier was at Origins and Gen Con. Like, imagine those, and that's it. Like, only the top 8 of that qualifier made it to Sunday or Saturday at Gen Con. And so only 8 people are going to get to the elimination rounds. Now, the prizes are a lot deeper. I mean, they're not a lot. They're down to top 32. It's like the same depth, but like there's not a cut to get there. So you're not even, like, you need to play till the end until, like, I don't know, you're mathematically eliminated from prizes, I would assume, or you just want to keep playing or whatever. But it's not, there's no room for error. Whereas, like, you could just drop out and play another one like hours later at Gen Con and Origins. Like, this is completely different. Like, there are no second guessing deck choices. There's none of that. Like, that's the number one thing. Like, you can't get a grasp of the actual tournament metagame and then adjust on the fly to play in another tournament that may be influenced by the same metagame, etc. Like, there's none of that. Like, there's no adapting on the fly other than the 50 cards in your characters that you brought with you, or up to 54 as some people like to run. It's just going to be a lot different. And if you're not, I guess for the players that, I don't know that anybody, quote, got used to the formats at Gen Con and Origins, but if that was your first major foray into this, and you were like, okay, I get my feet wet in the first one, because I know I wasn't there for the first one, Origins, but it didn't work out this way because it was on a Thursday. But like it just happened to be. This is not like because I was there or something like that. But like the first one on Friday at Origins was the largest one they had. The first one at Gen Con were the largest ones they had, and so like imagine that's your only chance of getting it.
Right.
One and done. Again, like the prize is passed down, but like that's it. To actually make it to Fortune and Glory. So
yeah, I think everybody coming in is going to be shooting for something better than just air quotes a top 32 finish. Everybody's got their eyes on the higher end stuff. But like you said, that it's not necessarily going to be a tiny field where it's, you could squeak in with a little better than 50%.
No, and you can't, and there's just no room. Which means there's no room for a deck choice that you're not familiar with. There's no room for a deck that has significant weaknesses against things you might expect to see in large numbers. Again, that all this is in air quotes, because we don't know what these things are going to be. So, I mean, and then the other wrinkle is the limited.
Well, yeah, I know. I don't know if I said this on a recording before, but I definitely said it to some other people in Discord where for me personally, I'm very much of the opinion I got to worry about the constructed rounds and then I'll worry about limited, which isn't necessarily the best way to go about it, but it is mentally I need to focus on the one thing at a time, get through this round, get through next round, etc. And then, okay, I'll shift gears to this other set, which to your point earlier about playing in the LCQs, I don't know if all of them are constructed.
They are, I believe.
Okay, because I was going to say if any of them are limited, that is also another great way to try and get some firsthand experience, even if you're already qualified, because then it's all right. Well, I just get more sealed experience.
I believe they're all constructed, though.
Well, there goes that idea. So nobody listen to that. You could play 2-pack or something, I guess. I don't know.
Right, sure. Or you could just buy a bunch of packs and make sealed decks.
Yeah.
You know, like, that might be a good use for your time on Fridays.
Exactly.
But I mean, to me, that it's not a crapshoot. Like, there's still a lot of skill.
Oh no! First we go with the Echo stuff because I screwed up, and now we're losing Scott. Scott,
I'm here.
Okay, we started to lose you there for that section. So you started out with it's not just a crapshoot, and then it kind of went to hell from there.
It's not just a crapshoot because you have some control over how you build it, but like at the same time, like you can't decide what you're going to do.
Right.
So there's no fret and worrying about it. You can only control what you can control, and that's only the constructed deck that you're bringing with you.
Right.
So I don't even see the point in fretting over, like, the rounds are going to be what they are. Like, I've opened a lot of sealed decks, and a very small number of them are, quote, unplayable. And there is a lot of build strategies that go into them. So you just have to, I don't know, hope you open well. There's nothing else to, but it doesn't mean if you don't open insanely, because you have to understand that, like, you're still going to play people within your bracket. So, like, if you're, 2-0 or 3-0, whenever it starts, like, you're still going to continue to play 3-0s who might be all the way across the room from you when you're sitting down to create the seal deck. So it's like, you might see a bunch of bombs open around you, and it doesn't really matter because people might be 0-2 and you're 2-0, and you won't even have a possible chance of facing them until you go 0-2 and they go 2-0. So it just doesn't matter because that factor of, like, not only what am I going to open, how am I going to build, but then, like, there's also that same factor put on my opponents. So, like, it all just relates to complete randomness as long as you're doing it correctly.
But Scott, you said there's no crapshoot. You said it was all.
No, I said it was a crapshoot.
Okay, I got you.
So assuming you build it correctly, like you're in no better or worse shape than anybody else. Is my whole point. Like you might think your deck is crap, but so could your opponent's decks. Like it doesn't matter.
Right.
So, like, obviously you want to have a good pool that you build correctly and play correctly. Like, sure, but like the last two are more important to me first. Play correctly and build correctly, and you can outplay people. I'm back, but it's not going to matter.
Yeah. Well, at this stage, we're pretty much officially done for topics. Was there anything else relating to the updates, the event in Dallas, or preparation for the Energon Invitational that you wanted to cover?
I mean, there's plenty more Energon Invitational stuff to talk about. Okay,
well, have at it, unless you wanted to close it up.
No, I mean, I just think my signal's going to give out again, so just be prepared for that. But, so, I think the big thing is just going to be a very, very, very long day. And as stated earlier, like, these rules are not going to help that situation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know how many people are familiar with, like, this marathon of a day. Like, if you ever played in, like, a Magic Pro Tour qualifier in the 90s, well, not 90s, but in the 2000s, and or a Pro Tour itself, or like things we played in, like, World of Warcraft Nationals Worlds, like other games Nationals Worlds, like I assume like a Yu-Gi-Oh Shojin Jump or whatever they're called, like things like that are like it's more intense than like a 6-round Grand Prix day one and everyone that's like whatever makes day two. It's going to be more intense than that.
Yeah. I mean, just from the sheer hours, I mean, you don't think that just sitting there playing a card game can be exhausting. But if you think about the fact that, you get up at 6 or 7 a.m., you maybe go get food, maybe you skip breakfast because you were rushing, or whoever you're staying with was derping around, didn't get their act together, so you didn't get out of the Airbnb or whatever to the venue. You get to the venue, you do your deck registration. Oh, let me grab something quick to eat. Oh, it's all the way on the other side of the convention center. I'll never make it there and back again, sort of thing. All of a sudden, round one starts, and 7 hours later, 8 hours later, 9 hours later, however many hours later, I haven't eaten. I didn't sleep properly last night, and I've been mentally focused so much that you may or may not necessarily recognize yourself slipping.
Well, I think decks have to be registered ahead of time on the app or something like that, right? They have to be turned in electronically.
Possibly, yeah.
And then I would not recommend skipping breakfast. I would not recommend.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying do those things. I'm saying they can happen.
Well, like, the other thing is, like, make sure you get, like, if you won a badge through Gen Con or Origins, like, make sure you get that, like, not on Saturday. Get that well ahead of time.
Yeah, or you're probably not making the event if you try to do that on Saturday.
The lines are, this is another thing to keep in mind. There's a metal detector at this event.
Yeah.
So going in and out of the convention center sucks. Like, completely sucks.
Yeah.
If you're taking the train, that metal detector line I actually find is faster. But, like, if you just want to go to Wawa, that's our convenience store, by the way.
Shout out to Wawa.
Shout out to Wawa. Like, I would highly recommend going to Wawa that's across the street. I think it's across Race, or it's across whatever. There's
right.
a big one. Go there ahead of time, stock up on sodas, stock up on snacks and stuff, and they come in at once. Like, Reading Terminal across the street is insane, is awesome for food, but I highly, highly doubt this event is going to have any kind of lunch or dinner break, because it's not a game by other companies.
Shot.
So,
shot.
So you're not going to have an opportunity to go there except for breakfast / early lunch, because I think we started what time do we start? 9, 10, I don't even know, 11, like, whatever.
Yeah. It's probably like player meeting at 9 or 10 and then start an hour from there.
Right. So you're only going to have an opportunity to go there for breakfast, and then, like, and grab snacks there the same way you would grab them from, like, the Wawa, and bring them with you. Because even, let's just say you finished your round in, like, 5 minutes, like, I guess then you could go out to the Reading Terminal and get something to eat. Again, rewind back to the part about the tournament rules that make these rounds take forever. Like, then you might have a chance.
I wouldn't count on that. Like, it's just the lines that I saw for the not train lines to get back in the building. I mean, I didn't stand in them, so I can't, from last year, I didn't stand in them, so I can't say how long it took, but it certainly looked like it was stretched way farther than, like, a block in some cases. So,
I mean, what I can tell you is last year we did best of one rounds, half hour, and if there was, like, if you had a buy or something, the half hour around, like, 3, 4 o'clock was enough time to go get something to eat and come back with the food itself. That's all I can tell you. But I wouldn't necessarily bank on that, because PAX Unplugged is getting bigger and bigger every year. And like we said, the metal detector issue is just going to be there.
Yeah, the growth from year 1 to year 2 was huge, and I don't anticipate that it's going to get smaller this year. So,
yeah, the card hall last year was the size of the entire convention the year before.
Yeah, that's where, okay, so we lost you for a little while, Scott, but I agree with you. It basically amounts to there is food up on the second floor, but the year 1 for PAX had basically everything except for, I think, D&D games that were in assorted side rooms in we'll call it the main hall. Now it's taking up every main concourse for different games. Like the card game area is an entire concourse room to itself. Then there's an independent dealer hall. Then there's an independent. So it went from a one-room convention to Gen Con in, like, the span of a year. Not 70,000 plus unique people, but a huge growth. And then again, this is the anticipation is that it's going to grow further. Point being, to rather than digress too much, is just that if you feel you're going to need stuff, like in my case, I need to carry around a bunch of food or make sure that I'm on regimented schedules, you're going to need to plan ahead. You really got to make sure that you have everything in order, or you're going to run the risk of just having to do without, which, it is what it is.
I mean, who isn't going to need stuff?
Well, there's always stuff.
I mean, that's my whole point, though. Like, we're talking about 9 rounds, see earlier rules, plus, so even without the earlier rules, every round went longer anyway.
Yep.
And now we're adding in these wrinkles. Like, I fail to see how it's not going to be like, I don't know, what, a 13, 14-hour day?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, as the day goes on, and this is something to your earlier point about people playing for top 32, is that normally if this were a single elim tournament, obviously it would change things because you're eliminating people. There's just in general less chance and less people that are going to be going to time because there are less people. So all of those should hypothetically get resolved more quickly, unless of course the slowest person in the room is always paired against the next slowest person in the room, and they always take forever. Like,
right.
But because of the Swiss structure, because of the way this works, and then remember, we're going to have to stop to get seal pools. They're going to have to seed everybody. They're going to have to open the packs. You're going to have to register it. We're probably going to swap decks. Then you got to build.
No, we are.
Yeah. So like all of these things are just piling on top of each other, where it's very much going to be, you need to do everything you need to do, and you got to do it quickly and on time. So, I agree with you. It's going to be a long day.
I mean, I can't overstate this because I have done this before many times, but I would have to venture that 60 to 70% of the room hasn't. Like, let's be honest.
Not in this scale, certainly.
Right. Well, I mean, in this scale, if you want to compare it to like whatever, then it's probably closer to like 80 or 90%. But that's, depending on how many people show up.
Right.
So yeah. I guess the only other thing I would mention is I don't know how many like if you need cards, I don't know how many like singles dealers there's going to be there. So like I wouldn't show up like needing cards.
I mean, last year I think Pastimes had singles, but it was also, we were talking only Wave 1 at the time, and I don't know whether that's still a thing for them, like how they're structuring their booth.
I mean, they had stuff at Gen Con, but it wasn't like...
Well, they didn't have singles at Gen Con, did they?
They did.
They did? Okay, then I just straight up missed that.
It wasn't that many, though, so like that's my point.
Right.
Like, if you need a random common, you better hope that people bring extras. So,
or that people are playing a lot of 2-pack or something.
right. Like uncommons, like whatever. Like I don't know how much of that. I don't know like what it costs to be a dealer there or anything like that. So I don't know of any big dealers that were planning to be there that sell Transformer singles. So I would just be aware of that. That's usually something that in other games you might be able to do more liberally, and I wouldn't bank on that here. Which is actually something we never brought up at the other conventions, but it's just something I thought about.
Yeah, I mean, by the same token, there's probably going to be a lot of people. I would think many people are traveling, if not with an official team, like you're going with your buddies to go play cards or just have fun for a weekend. So hopefully somebody will have your back, but it is definitely a concern. Make sure you're packing properly, I guess. Yeah, I don't, other than those points, I don't know if there's anything off the top of my head to call out specifically. I
mean, I would bring extra sleeves because I would bring an extra.
That I'm sure you can get on site if push came to shove.
But I would also bring an extra set of sleeves for limited as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So be prepared to have a set of sleeves for limited.
I tried doing it without sleeves the other day at one of our local events, and yeah, it was nightmarish.
Yeah. So I would have sleeves specifically for your limited deck that are different than your constructed deck also.
That's a good point. Although I guess by that point in the day, you should be able to just pack away your constructed.
Yeah, but I would just not.
Yeah, it's one of those silly things that like, oh, I'll never mix those two together, and then you drop them or something, and you go, well, oops.
Right. I mean, you just don't want to put yourself in a situation where, and I would not try, like, don't put yourself in a situation where anything is causing you to spend unnecessary time.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big thing for me. Like, honestly, like, if possible, like, let's just say you're showing up with a backpack, right? Like, don't put other decks in your backpack. Like,
yeah, there's no need to care. You're not going to have time to play other games.
Like, right. Like, I think we have to register at least the night before, if not, I assume it's the night before. So, or the day of. Like, so electronically. I think we have to register electronically the night before or before, I don't know what, let's just say a couple hours before the event starts, like whatever. You have to submit your deck online. So, like, I just don't see any reason to bring any other decks or anything like that with you.
Yeah.
Like, I would even bring like a deck holder that only held your deck, sideboard, and like characters you can get from outside the game if that's a situation.
Right.
Because you just don't want to be fumbling around with a bunch of stuff. I think at Gen Con it was a lot smoother in terms of like, it wasn't just put up the pairings and the round starts 30 seconds later. Like there was a little bit of leeway, but I just anticipate this being such a long day that's going to start, that time in between stuff is going to start to reduce as time goes on.
I mean, something as silly as, oh, I got to go grab a pack of sleeves, or I need to go do this or that, means one less bathroom break, or that time that you could have tried to make a mad dash to one of the food vendors or something. Like, it sounds dumb. Like, I could imagine somebody out there listening to this or watching the YouTube video and going, well, that's ridiculous. How could that ever possibly happen? I'll be fine. And then one of the times when you're sitting there starving in round 8, you're going to wonder why. Did I lose you, Scott? I offended him that much.
No, I'm just sitting here. I'm not even driving. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are all important things to keep in mind. It's one of those that it's not necessary. I mean, obviously, testing, choosing your deck, preparing properly are all clearly important, but there are other parts that go into preparing for the event that aren't necessarily just the actual gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of that, because it is such a marathon, it's a marathon. Again, play something you're familiar with. Understand your pace of play. Don't be expected to be able to take back mistakes at all. I mean, whatever the highest level you've played anything at, assume it's going to be even higher than that, is the only thing I can say. I mean, it can't obviously be higher if you've played in Pro Tours and things like that, but like, I would just assume it's at that level or above if you've never played in things like that.
Right.
I mean, it's fine to be nervous, but like, don't let it kill you, I guess, or don't let it get to you. I don't know.
I mean, that's one of those things that like it's tough to. There's a reason you hear about stories for like pro sports where people choke when they get to a big game or something. Like, you don't necessarily realize until you're there, or you don't know how you're going to personally react or address it unless you've been in the situation before. So it is definitely something to consider where, yes, you have to be conscious of the time. You need to make sure that you're playing at an appropriate speed, but in between games or in between matches or whatever, you might feel yourself going on tilt. And tilt isn't necessarily you're raging and flipping the table. It just means that you're not in the appropriate frame of mind. So you could easily put yourself on tilt because, oh, that was a bad matchup game 1. This is what I've been building to all year and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, you just need to, it's a long day. Any given game or match is not necessarily going to be the end of the road.
Yeah. I mean, you could have been building this all day, but realistically, you had just as much time with this metagame as anybody else did.
So no, I meant like from a mental. Yeah, I agree with you about the. Chat's pointing out something good that we didn't touch on, but when in doubt, call a judge.
Oh yeah,
For sure. And that's where the pace of play and all that other stuff comes into play.
And it's like, we did mention this earlier. You're not being a dick by doing something like that. It's just, look, everybody's trying to keep everything above board. Everybody wants to keep everything on the up and up. That's literally what the judge's job is to do. So it's fine. Don't feel guilty about it.
No, and you'll get a time extension, so don't worry about how long you're sitting there basically maintaining board state while a judge is coming over or something like that. I anticipate a lot of that, especially in the limited rounds.
Absolutely. There's going to be some really bizarre interactions that people are going to go, well, wait, what? And it'll have to get clarified. So,
yeah, any issue, call a judge. I mean, I've called judges many times. So, for very various reasons. What else can I say about it? I mean, the marathon nature is really the big issue. Like, that's why I would just play something that you're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just going to be, like, you're going to have an advantage just knowing some of the interactions, because it is going to be an unknown metagame, and you're probably going to sit across from character lineups. You're definitely going to sit across from character lineups you've never seen before.
That's a given.
I mean, yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, you're definitely going to see battle cards you haven't seen before in certain combinations. Turns are definitely going to play out differently than ways that you've seen them before. There's a difference between playing slow and playing methodically. Like, don't miss a phase, but like, don't expect somebody to allow you to do like, there are little things, but like, don't expect somebody to just allow you to do something. Like, I guess the big one I can think of is like something like, I don't know, you didn't throw a javelin, or you didn't play the Springer extra action phases in the right order. Like if you played them in the wrong order, like, you missed one of them, that's it, you're done.
Yeah.
So if you're playing cards like that, you have to make sure you're using them correctly, and not the way you've been shortcutting them or colloquially using them. Just make sure what you've been doing is correct. You're not, like, don't be like, oh, I forgot to flip or something like that. Like, these are things I do myself, like, in testing. So I'm just trying to point out what I do poorly in testing.
Well, I think we all do some combination, if not all of these, at some point.
Yeah, the other thing is, like, you can't sweat the little stuff. Like, believe me, I've flown to world championships and not made day 2, like, many times when it was that type of format in other games, and like, did terribly for like no reason. Like, I had a teammate who made top 8 of a major event. I was playing the exact same deck and I went 0-3. Like, sometimes it's just not your day. Like, don't beat yourself up over it. Like, this is only year 1 of the game. Like, this is not, for a lot of people, this is the biggest event they've played in any game, period. And so, like, there's no shame in, like, not being prepared because you weren't expecting XYZ deck to show up, because, we've talked about these topics, like, ad nauseum. Like, we go over them again if we wanted to, but, like, didn't have the right people to test with, didn't have a broad enough scope of the meta, like, took in too much information from, like, sources you shouldn't have taken information from, like, whatever it is. It's just not your day. Like, whatever it is, like, don't beat yourself up over any one individual game, or honestly, like, any just bad call of the event in general. Like, this is not easy. Like, if this was easy, like the cream rises to the top in a lot of things, and I think you've seen that across the board in all organized play events that have occurred throughout the year. Like, you're seeing a lot of the same names over and over and over again. It's because, some people are used to this type of pressure. Some people can adapt on the fly. Some people just live and breathe the game more than others. Like, again, this is only year 1 of the game. I think there's a lot to be learned just by being there, by interacting, by, like, whatever. I just think this is a great opportunity if you've never played in a trading card game at this level. If this is your first at this level, like, I assume most people going played at either Gen Con or Origins, but if you didn't, this is going to be much different for you if you didn't play in those 2 major events. But even if you did, this is still going to be on another level. So if you've never played in an event of this caliber, I guess at this point in other card games, just be prepared for a different experience is all I can say. Like, it's just different.
Yeah. It's definitely a fun experience, though. But it is. I mean, the best way to put it is that it is different. So maybe that, as you said, it's going to be something that people are going to take to, and they're going to get hooked. This is now their addiction, going to these sort of events, this caliber of events. They want to bring that back to their locals and try and get people up, or maybe it's not for them, and that's perfectly fine. I do want to echo what you had said about if you are because I can feel that myself. Like if you're feeling invested in this, like emotionally, like this is the thing. The year was building up to Worlds, the Energon Invitational, whatever you want to call it. It's, you clearly want to do well, but it's like I was saying earlier, you can't put yourself on tilt because of a round one loss, or because, like you said, oh man, I see that deck two seats down from me and I have no idea what that is and it's winning. Like you have to trust the work you put in and just keep going through with the day.
And if you didn't put enough work in, like, just play something you're familiar with or whatever and be okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't help, like, once you're sitting there, I mean, if you're listening to this live, you have a little bit more time,
Wow.
but not really much. But
Yeah.
if you're listening to this, like, on Monday when it's released, like, I don't know, unless you're local like us, like, you're flying in on Thursday and you have, even all day Friday isn't enough time to discover something. I've done this before in the past, don't get me wrong, but it's because I had teammates that were able to show me something that I missed that literally lived in different states. So, like, that's the only time that I was actually, and I had to scramble around the convention center finding commons, like I told you before. Like, I have stories about this before, but, like, I have other stories where it's like, I couldn't fall asleep and I'm walking around streets of Paris at 3:00 in the morning. Like, so, like, you're going to be nervous. Like, I'm not saying, like, take an Ambien or something like that, but, like, if again, I'm not going to be staying in a hotel for this, but if you do, like, I use the white noise app, for example, to help me fall asleep. Like, whatever it takes. Like, you can't change your lodging plans now, but, like, I wouldn't recommend, like, 1 billion people staying in a room, because it's just going to be,
1 billion people
experience.
staying in a room.
Yeah,
like,
terrible experience.
If you've ever done that before, it usually doesn't work out for anybody.
I mean, depending on where you're staying, like, you can go get food while other people are showering, etc. Like, and that's fine. Yeah. And that's, like, that could be the experience I know that, like, it's not cheap to fly to Philly, it's not cheap to stay there, and all that. But I guess the only thing we didn't talk about was really, like, we didn't pump up our own city. I don't know. Do you want to talk about that for a little bit?
I mean, it's not really ours. I've lived here now for almost 7 years, and it still feels like I don't know where anything about it, because I grew up in New Jersey. So
you grew up like a freehold New Jersey, like,
yeah,
an hour away.
Yes, but that doesn't mean I ever like I went to Philly on, like, a class field trip or something. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't. I usually went up into New York, and even then, that was super sparingly. I mean, there's certainly a lot of things that you can do. So if you're coming down on Friday, you are well prepped, like we had been discussing. You already have everything lined up. There's plenty of stuff for you to do, even if it's not literally in the convention hall, even just around the convention hall. But, I mean, for me, when I've gone to other events and I've gone to cities, I'm not usually a sightseeing person, to be perfectly honest. So I'm getting there. I'm, like, taking the slow roll of, okay, now I'm going to go to the convention hall and just figure out where things physically are and just kind of wander around for a little while to take it easy the day before an event. It sounds like, based on some of your stories, that you're a little more wanderlust, Scott.
Usually after the event's over.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this is a unique opportunity, like you said. Like, the Friday is a unique opportunity where if you're already qualified, you don't necessarily have to do that.
Right.
So you can, and I think the convention center is only a few blocks away from, like, Independence Hall, the Liberty Bell, stuff like that. There's a lot of good restaurants around there. Like we said, Reading Terminal you should go to for breakfast and probably lunch on the day, especially on Friday.
Days that you have more time.
Yeah. Like, when I go, like, again, I never care where a lot of people are like, oh, you're, like, when I used to go to, like, travel internationally to play card games, they're like, oh, you're going to Paris. I'm like, yeah, sure.
You're going to see the inside of a ballroom for.
Yeah, I mean
that's like that meme. There's a meme going around. It's like, oh, you travel the world. That's so cool. It's like the world, but it's 4 hotel fronts.
Yeah, but like then I remember when we went to Paris the first time because I've been there twice since. Like for gaming again, like the equivalent of the Friday we went to the Louvre and things like that. So we did that. So if you haven't been to Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell and Constitution Center and all that kind of stuff, like, go for it. There's a lot of good museums like the Franklin Institute and Academy of Natural Sciences and things like that are downtown. It's a little too cold to go to the zoo, but it's a pretty good zoo.
Yeah,
I'm sure you go there all the time because you have 2 little kids.
Yeah, we do actually hit up the zoo all the time. That is definitely true.
Maybe there's Christmas lights at the zoo. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if the city's Christmas stuff is going to be up. I assume it's up, but
well, the convention center is like right in the middle of Chinatown, and there's that little park area.
I'm legally obligated because wife is in chat. The Museum of the American Revolution.
Oh, okay, sure.
She just showed up in chat. I didn't even see the name. I saw it, and I'm like, that's definitely her.
There's the Please Touch Museum. There's the Mutter Museum.
There's
the Philadelphia Museum of Art, which is really nice. Like I would, and if you're into fine dining, I can point you in the direction of a lot of really good restaurants. It might be tough to get a reservation now, but I can, like, if you want a really good reservation for like Thursday night or Saturday night, I wouldn't do it Friday night. Like there's a lot of like renowned chefs in the area, like top chefs in the area, that are not that far from the convention center. If you like Asian food, there's a lot of good Asian food right by the convention center.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, Reading Terminal pretty much has everything. So I guess the only thing left is if you really want to go to Pat's and Gino's and get a cheesesteak.
No, you don't.
I don't recommend going to Pat's and Gino's.
Yeah, there's that.
Just go to D'Alessandro's in the Reading Terminal. It's fine. If you really want to travel and get a much better one, go to Jim's on South Street, which I think was just rated. I think it was top rated in the last article I saw.
Nice.
For people to travel to. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like the city's there. I go to a lot of restaurants there. I don't really and I go to the museums and stuff, but I don't go down there all that often. So
yeah, I mean, it's something that from having been to like traveling either for card games or other reasons throughout the U.S., and we were joking about it since I grew up so close to both Philadelphia and New York that I had always just pictured that's what a city is, that size, that many people, that many different things, until I started traveling other parts of the United States and other areas. And it's like, yeah, it's a city. There's a lot of people, not that many, like as compared to here, or not that many things as compared to here. So if you do have the spare time, whether it's because you came in early, you're staying late, whatever, there's definitely a lot of things you can check out.
Yeah, like if you went to Gen Con or you went to Origins, there's way more to do around the convention center in Philadelphia than there is in those cities, to be honest with you.
It's one of those things that, to be honest, it would be almost analysis paralysis level, where it's like, all right, we walk out of the convention hall. Well, what do you guys want to do? I don't know. There's like 7,000 things, and you spend 2 hours deciding. So it may be worth, like, especially if you have the free time ahead of time, or you're going to have free time rather during the convention, like map it out to say, okay, yeah, I want to make sure that I at least make it to here. And then on the way, I'm sure you'll see 50 things. It's like, oh, well, maybe I'll check that out too.
And lastly, if you're around on Sunday and you're listening to this, and if you remember our Patreon, you already know this, but otherwise, seek us out. We are having a happy hour at the Field House, which is connected to the convention center as soon as you come out of the train station. It's across from the Dunkin' Donuts.
Nice.
I think we have it starting at 3:00. Just get in touch with myself, Dan, or Vince, if you're not already a member of the Patreon, because there's a different way of getting in. So just let us know if you're interested in attending. I'm sure we can make it work, just because I don't know how many people are going to be there compared to the number of people that I set it up for. So if you want to watch some football after the top 8, and it's going to go, I think, from 3:00 to 8:00, feel free to let us know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what time the actual convention closes on Sunday, but I'm assuming it's probably like 3 or 4.
It's usually 4, and it's like it's like a hard. Like,
Oh
you
yeah,
must
they
be out.
we should probably point that out. Yeah, like they're not kidding. It's you don't have to go home, but you need to get the hell out.
Yeah, you can't stay here
Yeah.
at all. I guess the only thing I would say, like, it's a really good public transportation system. So depending on where you're coming from and where you're staying, like, it's very easy. The convention center is what I think Market East or whatever. Is that the?
Yes.
I think that's it's wherever the Reading terminal is. Like, it's very easy to get in and out from subway perspective or even from a train perspective. Like, I'm probably going to train.
Oh yeah.
On Friday and probably Saturday because I live west of the city.
I'm like only a handful of miles outside the city, and I mean the train is really close. I walk to the train. My wife and I have done this the last 2 PAXs. We walk to the train, jump on the train, go to the convention center, and take the train back home. It's so much easier. Even as somebody who lives here, I can only imagine that for someone coming from out of town that it's going to be worlds easier than driving.
Yeah, I mean, depending on where you're staying, it may be a different situation. Like,
well,
if
you're 100 miles from the nearest train stop, I mean,
I know some people, like, a few years ago in a different, like, when I was playing a different game, like, they were staying in Cherry Hill, so they had to take, like, the PATH train in. I still told them, yes,
oh boy,
take the PATH train in instead of driving in.
Well, it's one less stressor of like, oh, well, I got to find a place to park, and I got to pay for parking. I got to make sure and then, oh, well, we had to park 30 blocks from the actual convention center. Like, you can take the train right to the convention center.
Yeah, again, different than Gen Con and Origins. The convention center is just one thing around there. Businesses are still happening on Thursday, Friday, even Saturday. So, like, finding a parking spot is not easy,
right?
And not cheap. So
that's that's a key component.
So, I guess the only thing is Reading Terminal it's not shut down on Sunday, but, like, not as much of it is open. Yeah. So if you want a flair of international food from different places around the world, and really good food, and try different things, like, make sure you hit it up on Thursday, Friday.
Right.
Again, it's probably too late for me to influence people's, like, travel plans and staying plans, but you can let me know if you haven't yet. But feel free.
Well, I think there's a lot of new firsts and experiences for everybody coming in, whether it's from the game and the convention or just general, experiencing the area. So yeah, a lot of new things.
I don't want to say don't overthink the experience, but at the same time, like, I guess just relax would be my thing. Like, try not to be too stressed out.
Yeah,
remember, it's still your hobby. So
yeah, you can definitely be your own worst enemy for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think that will do it for the sections and stuff that I thought was going to be another 45-minute episode. I'm looking at the timer, and it's probably around 90 minutes again, unless I cut out that whole part with the echo at the beginning. But we'll see.
No, we need the rules.
Yeah, I know. Well, when we talked about Dallas, and again, congrats to Kai for taking that down. And by the time everybody's hearing this, we'll probably all be getting in that last second preparation for the Energon Invitational. We hope to see everybody out there. If you happen to see one of us, feel free to come up and say hello, talk to us, whatever. I had a bunch of people who said, "Oh, I recognize the voice, but where do I know you from?" Because I had the mask on up until Gen Con. So now people will recognize the mug at least, whether they want to or not.
Yeah. And I don't look like Rick Sanchez. My face is out there other places you can find me.
Yes. All right, folks. As always, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And please tune in next time for more Tech Talk.